So, fellas, we got Joe Rogan talking to Bernie Sanders, and oh boy, is Bernie a sneaky one. I hope you're sitting down. We have a first on this channel. We have Bernie Sanders, a man in a position of great political power who happens to be Jewish, supporting the communist candidate for mayor in New York City, Zohran Mamdani.
I think that is.
Did you watch the New York City debates, the mayoral
I heard.
debates?
I got involved, and I'm supporting Mr. Mamdani.
Unfathomable, I know. Now, of course, Zohran doesn't say he's communist. So allow me to mess with the Zohran. Let me read you some of his classics from X. Zohran Mamdani, we need to ban all guns. Zohran Mamdani, we don't need an investigation to know that the NYPD is racist, anti-queer, and a major threat to public safety. We need to defund the NYPD. So you're probably saying to yourself, you says, that's not proof that he's communist. Well, how about Zohran Mamdani? If we want everyone to be full participants in the economy, we need worker ownership of the means of production. Sound familiar? Sound a bit Marxist? Still not convinced, huh? Well, that's all I have. Oh! There's one thing I almost forgot. Do you have another minute? Zohran Mamdani. Them. So what kind of mayor does NYC need right now? Me. And it's a picture of a communist mayor being elected in some foreign country with a hammer and sickle in their name and the hashtag communist. It's as the French say, commie Jew. But let's be fair, it's not like Bernie Sanders is acting like Mamdani's playbook should be recommended for Democrats to win national elections. Reporting from The Hill, Sanders says Harris would be president with Mamdani's playbook. My, how the fringes of the party moved to the forefront so quickly. But let's go into a fantastical world right now. Let's go into the world where Bernie Sanders didn't get dicked over and won the presidency.
What would you have done? Like, imagine you hadn't gotten derailed and they hadn't conspired against you and you actually became the Democratic candidate for president and you won. What would you have done differently?
Okay. How many hours do we have?
We got all the time in the world, Bernie.
I know. Declare something like our healthcare system as an emergency and figure out ways that we can do what every other major country on earth does, and that is guarantee healthcare to all people. So one of the things you do is say, okay, we need tens of thousands of more doctors and hundreds of thousands of more nurses and dentists and so forth and so on. And we're going to move aggressively to make sure that in America, everybody in this country has health care as a human right.
There's two issues I have with government solutions, especially from the left, or as they're known historically, communists. Number one is we've seen how government spends money. It's sociopathic. They send hundreds of billions of dollars overseas. They print money and send it out of the country. You would have to, at the very least, start lying to me and propagandize me into believing that government has changed and is now distributing the money based on the needs of the people. You'll have to lie to me because you're never going to truthfully convince me of that. Number two, you're flooding the fucking country with illegals and prioritizing them over the citizens of the country. Even before you've given healthcare access to all of the legal citizens of the country, you also support giving illegal aliens free healthcare access.
Raise your hand if your government plan would provide coverage for undocumented immigrants. Okay, let me start with you.
Now that's hilarious. That really is hilarious. What do we normally say when healthcare is called free? It's not free. You have to pay for it. It has to come from somewhere. With the illegal immigrants, it's literally free. They haven't paid into anything. It's sociopathic through and through.
I think that's number one. Number two, at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, you don't give tax breaks to billionaires. You demand that they start paying their fair share of taxes. And one of the problems that we have, it's not just an American issue, it's a global issue. A lot of these zillionaires are hiding their money in tax havens in the Cayman Islands and elsewhere. And that's an international issue. But I think we have to have a fair tax system which says that individuals and wealthy and corporations that are making a whole lot of money start paying their fair share of taxes.
What is their fair share?
I don't know. I mean, you know.
Trying to give a more communist answer. What is their fair share? 83 years old. For 50 years of his life, he's been a communist, leftist, progressive, Democrat, independent, whatever he is. And after all that time saying, they need to pay their fair share. They need to pay their fair share. Bernie, what is their fair share?
Gefilte fish.
What is their fair share?
I don't know. I mean, under Eisenhower, the very rich paid, at their upper levels, 90%, But let me be very honest with you, Joe, on this one.
90% is kind of crazy, though, right?
No, that's not, of course, that's just for the, your billionth dollar. You know what I mean? It's not your first dollar. It's not
So if
like,
you make $1 billion, you pay $900 million in
no,
taxes?
No, that's not what it means. It means on your $900 million, you're going to pay 90%.
Okay.
All right.
Yes, Satan? Oh, I'm sorry, sir. You sounded like someone else.
Bernie, you must be out of your pocket-picking mind if you think we trust you to spend that money wisely, especially at the cost of maximum entrepreneurial innovation. I'll choose private tyranny over government tyranny every time. A lot of us forget what Twitter was like before Elon made it into X. Possibly millions of friendships were made on X that wouldn't have been able to be made on Twitter, let alone all the right-wing dissidents he brought back. I'm not jealous of billionaires. I'm at peace with myself. I don't get jealous over the possessions of other people. I actually get really pissed off when you advocate for stealing their money and sending it overseas. Speaking of overseas, let's talk about climate change, and more specifically, climate alarmism. Joe Rogan couldn't have done this on purpose, but bless his heart. He uses Bernie talking about wealth inequality and greedy people to counter Bernie's climate alarmism. It's poetic.
I think he got a rigged system controlled economically and politically by very, very wealthy and powerful people who could care less for working families. Now, you got to deal with this climate change issue. And I know that, there are some people who think climate change is a hoax. It ain't a hoax.
I think the climate change issue is very complicated. And I think, did you see the Washington Post piece that they wrote where they did this long-term view? First of all, the reality is that the Earth's temperature has never been static, right? We could both agree on that. It's always been up and down. There's been ice ages and heat waves. And then the Washington Post looked at it. What was the time period that they looked at? Essentially, they found that we're in a cooling period. That the Earth over the past X amount of years, and this was like a very inconvenient discovery, but they had to report the data, and kudos to them for doing that. Scientists have captured the Earth's climate change over the last 485 million years. Here's a surprising place we stand now. So look at the far end of that graph, and you see we're in a cooling period.
Well, I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, dude. Let's give Bernie 90% of billions of dollars. I'm not so sure about that inconvenient fact to my narrative. Let's check in with a historic Democrat stronghold and see how they've been spending their money. Grok, how long has Baltimore been Democrat for? Baltimore has had Democratic mayors continuously since 1967. This marks over 58 years of Democratic control of the mayor's office as of June 2025. The Baltimore City Council has also been exclusively Democratic since 1939, spanning over 85 years. At the state level, the Maryland General Assembly has been under Democratic control since 1920, over a century. Where does Baltimore rank in terms of funding per pupil? Baltimore City Public Schools ranks among the highest funded large school districts in the United States for per pupil spending. In 2022, Baltimore City Schools spent approximately $21,606 per student, making it the fourth most funded large school system in the US. How many schools in Baltimore have 0 students proficient in math? In 2023, 23 Baltimore City public schools had 0 students proficient in math. More specifically, 13 of these were Baltimore City high schools, representing 40% of the 32 high schools. These figures reflect persistent challenges, as a similar 2017 report also identified 13 schools with 0 math proficiency. Overall, Baltimore City's math proficiency rate for 3rd through 8th graders was 7% in 2022, the lowest in Maryland. So they're not spending the money well. The top 1% pay 40% of all federal taxes. They never tell you where the money goes. You cannot advocate for receiving more tax money without a conversation about transparency. But let's watch Joe Rogan throw these climate billionaires right back in Bernie's commie mug.
So look at the far end of that graph, and you see we're in a cooling period.
Well, I'm not sure. I didn't read that article, but
Yeah.
the scientists who are out there, I think.
I know, but there's a lot of money involved in that too, Bernie. That's part of the problem. There's a lot of money involved in this whole climate change emergency issue, and there's a lot of control, and that's a big part of this problem. These people that we've all discussed that have so much money and so much control over our societies, multinational corporations, giving them more control over citizens. And this is a vehicle for that. And this is what's dangerous about this whole climate change emergency, because it allows these fucking creeps that have been controlling people and controlling what you do and what you say and how you spend your money with people that already live in check to check, and you put additional constraints on them and you make them even more scared. And then you put additional measures where you can look at their carbon footprint. You can look at the amount they travel. What do you put a carbon tax on these people? Let's figure out how to extract more money from them. That's what bothers me about this climate change emergency. Not that we can all agree pollution is a terrible thing.
When you go to war against nature, you lose.
Yeah, because you're a part of
Humanity
nature.
loses. Exactly
but
right.
we're worshiping the almighty dollar
You got it.
above the mother.
You asked me when I ran for president, one of the interests.
Very impressive, Bernie. A man at your age can nail a platitude nollie into a heel flip obfuscation. Incredible. Can you believe a politician just changes the subject when he's proven wrong? But let's mosey on over to minimum wage.
I think the minimum wage in this country is ridiculous. I mean, to $7, what?
It's insane.
It's insane. How do you live off $7? You go to Jimmy John's, you get a sub. How much is a sub? How much is a sub, like a big sub at Jimmy John's? Some guy was just did a TikTok video where he's like, they're trying to say that minimum wage $15 is too much. I think he had a sub that he bought for $25. So imagine that's your lunch. So imagine you have to work 3.5 hours just to pay for a sandwich. Imagine how insane that is.
It's insane.
That's insane. Like, how do you eat? How do you eat dinner? How do you eat lunch?
Joe,
how do you
I
eat breakfast?
I have talked to people who make $10-12 an hour trying to raise a kid.
Jesus.
That's right.
First of all, I mean, this is why poor people are stupid. Don't buy a $25 sandwich. That's first of all. Make a sandwich for $2. Decent sandwich too. But I love how Bernie says he's talked to, people trying to raise kids on $10 or $12 an hour. But the federal minimum wage is $7.25. Why haven't you talked to people trying to raise kids on $7.25 an hour? Is it because even though the federal minimum wage is $7.25, that there's places that pay above the federal minimum wage and the market tends to regulate it in a lot of areas? Just thought that was odd. If you're like, yeah, the minimum wage is too low, it's $7.25. So I talked to people making $10 or $12. It's like, okay, well that's closer to 15. Sounds like it's already working itself out.
Well, the argument against that is, hey, these are entry-level jobs that are supposed to be for kids.
No, and that's factually incorrect. Yeah, of course, it's true to some degree.
To some degree, but if you have grown adults that are working those jobs, now it becomes disgusting.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Especially when you're dealing with an enormous corporation.
You got it.
Right.
So we put a lot of pressure. We are trying to raise the minimum wage, federal minimum wage, to $17 an hour. That's
a reasonable amount of money.
Well, I guess we love corporations all of a sudden because corporations can afford to reduce their revenue if it means wiping out competition in the area that can't do it. We saw it during COVID. They were allowed to stay open. The mom and pop shops, they had to close. So, yeah, I mean, you think McDonald's wouldn't increase it to $20, $30 an hour? They'll wipe out competition, then once there's no competition, they'll take a hit in the meantime, but they know over time they can sustain that because they're a large corporation, and then once they wipe out competition, then they can raise prices. I mean, raising the federal minimum wage is elitist. It is pro-massive conglomerate corporation. Not to mention, I just love how diversity is forgotten when it comes to the federal minimum wage. The cost of living varies dramatically across the country. Even within a state, the city compared to a rural area is incredibly different. A federal minimum wage doesn't make any sense. It just hurts the poor areas. That's, again, it just helps the wealthy. It just hurts the poor areas because then they can't make their own businesses in these areas if they have to pay such a high federal minimum wage in a local area where the cost of living is very low. Why should you be a cashier at McDonald's at 15, making $17 an hour in rural Oklahoma? And I'm sorry, fellas, but does flooding the country with illegal and legal immigration raise wages or lower wages? If you have more people, they'll be willing to work, for lower pay because there's more people. You can't just you can't just think of this in a vacuum and just raise the federal minimum wage without turning off the faucet of immigrants coming into the country. It's not sustainable. Unless, of course, you're giant corporations, then it's wahoo! Here we go! A bunch of people that are coming in, and we can afford to pay them whatever, and we're gonna completely clear out smaller businesses. Yay for the little guy! But I mean, what's the solution? What other countries should we look to for solutions?
As a nation, forget Ford, forget General Motors, how as a nation do we deal with this exploding technology so that it benefits all of us and not just Mr. Ford and Mr. General Motors? That's the question, I think. All right, and it's going to require radical solutions. So for a start, it gets back to something we talked about a little while ago. If you had healthcare as a human right, right? Mm-hmm. All right. As people in almost every other wealthy country have.
First of all, this is a commie tactic as old as time. They get to be radical. A radical solution is good when they say it. They can be radical. The right never does anything radical. Everything the right does is extreme, which is bad, and then everything they do is radical, which is good. But also, like what other wealthy countries? What other countries do you want us to be? Do you mean like the white countries? Is that who you want us to be like? This is the problem the commies run into every time.
Dominant narrative in America is white people are evil, white people suck, we should be ashamed of ourselves, and
I don't think we should be ashamed of ourselves. I think that we should take responsibility for the system that we've created.
The best system in the world?
Oh, we do not have the best system in the world.
Who has a better system?
There are many European countries that are much better off than us.
Oh, you mean like the European countries with a higher density of whites, like Northern Europe?
That's one way to phrase it, I guess.
You don't mean Turkey.
No.
You don't mean Eastern Europe.
No.
With the communists. So the only time you can come up with a system that's better than America, it's a country that's more white than America. I don't understand.
I don't know what to say to that, so.
Nerdy female sideshow Bob over here. Nothing to say for herself. Oh man, you know, I hate people like that. I hate people like that. But is it because I don't know them? Or is it because I know them? Something to think about.
You know, we got to bring, for so many reasons, whether it's all of these issues that we're talking about and everything else, pandemics, you know what? We got to bring the world together.
Yes.
Okay? And not hate people because they're in Canada or they're in China or Iran.
Ridiculous.
All right? And that ain't easy. But we have to, when I was mayor way back, I did this, that was when the Soviet Union still existed. Never forget this. We brought kids from a city in Russia, Yaroslavl, an old city in Russia. And we brought them to Vermont, and they were kids, the boys and girls from Russia would kid around with boys and girls from America. And you look at these kids, they had a great time. You know, people do not have to hate each other.
It's stupid.
It's
You don't even know them.
Exactly. That's why you hate them.
It's the dumbest part about it. Yeah.
All right, you know why people hate is based on ignorance, right?
Wrong, Bernie. Oh boy, is that wrong. I'll end it here. Let me explain the social phenomenon that is the fatigue movement. People don't have N-word fatigue because they don't know them and don't spend time around them. You can only have fatigue through proximity and a series of unbelievably negative and toxic interactions. In the United States, we don't like Pakistanis. We don't have Pakistani fatigue. You want to know who has Pakistani fatigue? The United Kingdom. And boy oh boy, across the pond do we have N-words that are leading to the capital N times. It's the exact opposite of ignorance. The people we hate is because we know more about them than they know about themselves. They operate in an incredibly predictive way, and you can only hate that person by knowing their pattern of behavior and watching it happen over and over again. But I'm a white guy, so I'm not allowed to say this. So, let's let a black man say it. Have a hood one.
It's like a civil war going on with black people, and there's two sides. It's black people and there's niggers.